Well, here we go, folks. Welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. This show is just for woodshop owners, cabinet makers, architecture mill workers, even closet companies who are interested in the business of the woodshop business. Now, if you're at a place in your company where, you're proud, you've already made it to 1 or 2 million in sales, you got a pretty good working team, you want to get to the next level, but you can't just see over the hill of what it takes to get to the next level, then you're in the right place. This show is all about getting to the next level by working smarter, not just harder. Today's guest is somebody that many of you already know because he's a CMA member, has been for a long time. Great guy, Brian Clancy. And he and I are going to be talking about what I learned jumping from 2 guys to 6. Now, Brian and I met through some of the work that I do through the CMA over the years. Fantastic group of people. I couldn't speak more highly of them. Anyways, follow Brian on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well. What a great way to go. That's a great professional platform to start to connect with people professionally. But let me tell you, here's why this particular episode is important to you. You're on this path in your business. Now, whether you're already at 16 or 20 people on your team and you're planning on growing to 30, or you're at 2 and you're thinking about getting to 6 people, what does that mean? And what's somebody else's story? A real owner in a real situation talking about how it's impacted him, the lessons learned along the way. It's going to be a very, very interesting and insightful episode, right? Also, and this is not an ad for the CMA. Hi, Amanda. But don't you find it interesting that so many of our success profiles on this show are owners who have joined some professional trade organization, whether it's the closet organization, whether it's OMAC, whether it's AWI, whether it's the CMA, and so many others. Isn't it interesting that so many business owners have gotten to that place in their shop where they realize, hey, I'm just looking inside the walls of my shop. I need to look outside of it. So you listen to a podcast like this one, or you join your local trade association. That is one of the indicators that I see of people leveling up. Again, let's use the same analogy. You want to get to the next level, but you can't see over the hill of getting to that next level. This is what the steps others are taking are. So you're going to learn a lot from Brian here today. Now, Brian is Irish. You're going to figure that out pretty quick. His accent is different than Coach Lee Miller. He's Scottish. See, they're not the same. Anyways, but what's funny about him being Irish is that many years ago, I wrote an article for Forbes magazine. And, the editor there would always call me when he had something boring that he wanted to write about, but he wanted me to make it more exciting. And so I remember one of my clients years ago had looked at the EOJ report, which those of you who are coaching with us one-on-one know the EOJ inside and out. But he had looked at doing the EOJ, and one day he just sort of blurted out, oh, this thing's like finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And so we renamed the EOJ report, for the purposes of the Forbes article, the Leprechaun Report. So if you ever want to go look at that, it's on the internet. You can just go Forbes, Dominic Rubino, and I think the title is something like "What Leprechauns Can Teach Us About Business." And the reason we called it that is because that particular magazine article came out around St. Patrick's Day. So, anyways, little side note there. Listen, there are simple systems to help you run this business. Make the money you deserve. Live the life you want. Produce the quality that you want. Be proud. Get ahead of the scheduling issues that you have. Get ahead of the issues where, we almost all seem to have this, at least at the beginning, but this is the kind of things we get brought in to solve. How do you solve that gap between we sold it, we engineered it, and now we got to get it to the floor? Somewhere in there, there's usually a disconnect. Well, hearing stories like Brian's helps you understand how other people are dealing with those same things. That's the simple systems that give you quiet confidence to stand a little taller, breathe a little easier, move forward with more clarity. If I had to summarize everything about this podcast, it is actually about mindset, the mindset of success. Being around people like Brian and hearing his story, learning from me because I channel other stories from other people to you. Now, I just mentioned mindset. So speaking of mindset, I got a couple of dad jokes for you. Now, why dad jokes? Huh? And why bad jokes? And why dad jokes poorly delivered with poor timing? Well, I want to get you laughing. And I want you to get your mind open to what our guest, Brian, has to say. Now, you might think I might be doing, and you know how I like to theme the jokes? You might think that the easy theme, this is laziness if I just did Irish jokes, right? But I'm not going to do that. I don't want Brian to be offended. I want him to come back on the show later. So we're not going to do Irish jokes, but a couple of jokes anyways. Remember, I choose these jokes so that you can deliver them to others and see the groans coming out of their mouth before they even say it. See their body position shift and see them also try to remember it really hard so they can deliver it when they go home tonight. So we're going to talk a lot about machines because Brian and I talked about machines in this episode. I asked the gym trainer what kind of machine I should use to get the best looking women. He looked at me again, and he said, try the ATM. This actually reminds me of something I said to one of my buddies once, just off the fly. We're at a party, and he walks up with his wife, and we're friends as couples. And he goes, "Hey Dom, how are you?" I'm like, "Good, good, good." And his wife is very nicely dressed, and I go, "Dude, she's so pretty. She makes you look rich." Hey, did you know that dogs cannot operate an MRI machine? But it turns out cats can. Uh, you see what I mean? Poor timing, poorly delivered. Yeah. Among all the machines out there, the pulley is the most egotistical. I could see you teaching this to one of the new guys on the team. Among all the machines out there, did you know the pulley is the most egotistical? It's always the center of attention. Okay, this one here borders on the spicy, but you'll be able to tell it. You could tell this one to well, you'll have to judge who you could tell this to. So a married couple goes to the hospital to have their baby delivered. When they get there, the doctor says he's invented a brand new machine that's going to transfer a portion of the mother's labor pain to the father. And he asked if they were willing to try it. So, of course, like, why not? They're both very much in favor of it. So the doctor set the pain transfer only to 10%, just to start off, explaining that even 10% was probably more pain than the father had ever experienced before. Now, as the labor progressed, the husband felt fine, and he actually asked the doctor to go ahead and kick it up a notch. He was just waiting for it to kick in. Well, the doctor then adjusted the machine to 20% pain transfer. The husband's still feeling okay. And in his head, he's thinking, this is fantastic. Women always complain about the pain of labor, but I'm really strong. I can handle it. Anyways, the doctor checks the husband's blood pressure. He's amazed at how well he's doing. I mean, he invented this machine, so he's surprised. At this point, they decided to turn the dial up all the way to 50%, halfway. The husband's still feeling okay. Now, since the pain transfer is obviously helping out the wife a lot, the husband encouraged the doctor to transfer all the pain to him. Well, wouldn't you know it? The wife delivers a healthy baby with almost no pain at all. And of course, her and her husband are super, super happy. Then they get home and the mailman is dead on their porch. I'll let that one sit for a while. You'll get it. Remember how I promised no Irish jokes? I lied. Did you hear Ireland is the fastest growing country in Europe? Its population is always doubling. And where do leprechauns go instead of Comic-Con? Leprechaun. Brian, I had to put those two in there for you, buddy. Thank you for being a guest on my show. I really appreciate it. Look, folks, I host this podcast because one day I want to be your business coach and I want to deliver these bad jokes to you live. Actually, it's me and a team of coaches. Did you know that when you work one-on-one with us, there's 3 coaching meetings a month? There's a lot. We stand right beside you to walk you through whatever your particular situation is and how you want to get to the next level. That's at least for the one-on-one coaching. We have group classes for people that are more of a growth mode at the smaller end of the scale, but also for larger businesses who might be like Brian, 2 to 6 employees, 6 to 12, 12 to 20, like when you're moving through those stages, or you find yourself stuck at a stage, like we've been $2 million for a couple of years. How do we get out of it? That's exactly when you talk to us. So listen, the reason I host this podcast is because one day I would be very proud to be part of those 3 meetings you get a month and stand beside you as you grow. And my team is trained the same as me. They just don't want to do podcasts. Anyways, I'm going to get into business coach mode for you. There's 2 simple actions. I want you to listen to Brian's story and I want you to see similarities between you and him, but I also want you to see the gaps. What has Brian done that you've been thinking about doing, wanting to do, but haven't done yet? Go do that thing. Brian is showing you the path that he took. He's showing you how he did it, right? So go take some action and then check on yourself. What was the impact of one little action over 24 hours? Remember, business coaching, which is my specialty, is about introducing to you 52 small changes over the course of a year. Imagine if you made 52 of the tiny changes you've always wanted to make in your business this year. Crazy what the end of the year would look like, right? The second thing is this. I want you to think on this idea. Are you happy being a woodshop owner who feels stuck at that 1 or 2 million a year because you can't see the hill over getting to the next level? Or are you finally ready to take the steps you need to get you to the next level? By the end of today's episode, you, my friend, will know the answer. So let's get to it. Mr. Brian Clancy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Dominic. How are you?
I'm so good. Well, yeah, what people don't know is you and I have already been laughing for 20 minutes before we even hit record.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I'm glad you're with me today. You and I know each other through the CMA,
Yes.
right? You're a professional cabinet maker. And today you're going to talk about what you learned jumping from two guys to six.
Yeah.
I
I'm
should,
still learning. I'm
yeah,
still learning, Dom.
it just occurred to me, I should ask, how many times did you jump from two guys to six? But that's probably
Just just the once.
just the once. Yeah.
Once was enough. Yeah.
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 Hey, why don't we start off getting people to know you a little bit better? And I'm going to ask
Okay.
my question. You ready? Here it comes. Mr. Brian Clancy, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these forward facing cabinet makers, furniture makers, and architecture millworkers all around the world?
All right. Well, I would quickly answer that question, Dominic, by telling you that like everyone else, I have a story to tell, but this one involves me taking a different path than what I thought I was going to be taking initially. So
Mm,
it kind of diverged in the woods, as the poem goes.
yeah,
I took a path that I thought I would never be on, or that I could not achieve. Um, so I'll start in the beginning. I'll tell you a little bit about growing up in Ireland, with uncles and relatives that were in the construction
trades,
business,
right?
the trades. I didn't actually, serve it my time in any trade. They serve apprenticeships over there in
Yeah,
Europe.
yeah.
So I took the college route. I spent,
Ah,
3 years in England, actually in Bournemouth in England, and I went to business school over there to learn about marketing. Um,
well, that has to
I
come in handy. So you have a
oh
marketing background from college.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was very. It was more like an associate's degree than a bachelor's degree. The
Uh-huh.
equivalency over here.
Yeah.
So I learned about sales, about marketing, but none of that applied to me until real life happened. Until I had my own business, and until
Yeah.
then it started to click, and I started to understand what the professors were trying to bang into my old thick Irish skull.
But that's such a great point because school is all about theory
Yes.
and life or business is about reality. And that's one of the things I work really hard at on the show. I'm so glad you brought it up is we got to talk about reality, not theory, because there's lots of theories out there, but until you try to push it through a filter, it's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah. And
That
I guess you found that as well.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. Like it sort of made sense theory wise, but it didn't really click until I was in my own situation and I had
Mm,
to go meet clients and present proposals to these people
yeah.
and try to basically, sell them that I understood, the importance of, having a little education as a background and then, real life experience, teaching me the rest of it.
Yeah.
So I ended up graduating from college. I'd always wanted to come to America. Both my parents had immigrated to the United States in the '60s. My
Mm,
father was part of an Irish traditional band, and he came out and he was playing music with his brothers
no
all
way.
all throughout the United States and Canada. They traveled all over America. This was, I guess, a folk era out here in the States at that
Yeah.
time.
Well, I
They,
know of
they,
the Irish Rovers, but that might be a little bit too.
no, that's around about the same time. They
Oh,
they
wow.
actually had their band was called the Irish Ramblers.
Oh,
So, it was pretty close to the same. And
yeah.
they went on this tour. Anyway, they ended up in Philadelphia playing at a gig. They
Yeah.
played Carnegie Hall, believe it or not. They
Oh,
played
wow.
Carnegie Hall. Yeah,
Yeah. Good for them.
yeah. They really were quite, quite the group. They had they took out an album, and my cousins who live here now, they still play Irish music, and they're still very involved in that culture,
Mm,
which is wonderful. We go to see them all the time.
jeez.
Um, so anyway, they ended up in Philadelphia at a gig. My mother was an immigrant from Ireland as well. She was living in Philly. She met my father, who was a
Oh.
banjo player in the band,
Mm. Oh,
and
the banjo players are always the worst.
that's
You know, usually I say that about the drummers, but
that's right. Yeah. So anyway, they ended up getting married. They met at that time. They went out a couple of dates. They got ended up getting married. They moved back to Ireland, and they brought
oh,
myself and my siblings up in Ireland, and that's where my
that
mother would tell us all the time what a great country America was. She wanted to stay, and my dad, because of his teaching certificate, had to go
oh, I
back to
see.
Ireland
So
to
his
keep the
trade, he was a teacher, so he wanted to get back ultimately, and yeah.
exactly, yeah. So that's what ended up happening. We were all brought up in Ireland, but I never forgot the story she used to tell us about America and how great it was. So when I got out of college, I decided I wanted to come visit my cousins and my uncles over here, and I fell in love with America right away. I mean, the weather for one thing was just so much so much more different than it was from growing up in Ireland. It was, I just loved it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, Ireland's a lot like Seattle. At least
okay,
Dublin. At least Dublin. When I was in Dublin, it's beautiful and green, and the grass, the trees, everything is so lush. And
yes.
really, it looks like Seattle.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's you know where I grew up, and when I came here, the response that I got from American people with Irish ancestry asking me about, you know,
Right.
immediately they started asking me about their family members or their ancestors that had grown up
Mm,
in Ireland, and there was such a fondness, in our conversation about what they were talking. I loved it immediately,
mm.
and I thought to myself, I would love to stay here and see the country a little bit. So I actually ended up um, working for my family here in the moving and storage business. They had an existing moving company.
I
Yeah.
have to admit, I thought that's where you were going to say. I ended up working for my family in a cabinet shop, but then you went to moving and storage.
Yeah, my uncle had a very successful moving and storage business in New York, and I went to work for him, and I could not believe how much I was sweating when I was carrying boxes when I was like 21, 22 years old, up and down 5 flights of
Yeah,
stairs
stairs to an apartment.
to an apartment in Manhattan. And so, anyway, I spent like probably the next 10 years approximately working for
Mm,
them. But, on the side, what I was doing was I went back to school at SUNY Purchase, which is a state of New York college that
mm.
offers night classes for photography and for um, woodworking and
Oh, okay. I was
cabinet.
going to say still not cabinetry, but there's the woodworking. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I took various night classes and courses in that, and I found that I just loved going back to the woodworking time and time again, and
Mm.
I just knew I loved it, and I had just a yearning in me to go pursue it. And a short time later, I found a shop that, I went and talked to the owner, and he said, "Yeah, we'd be willing to take you on." So I left the company car and everything else behind that, I was provided for me at the moving company,
Right.
and started pushing the broom at the cabinet shop for the first time, and that was quite a humbling experience.
Yeah. As soon as you start something new, you realize it's uh,
Low man on the totem pole.
yeah, to just start again, right?
Yeah.
What made you
So
decide to start your own shop though? Is that when you immediately started your own shop or you went to work for somebody?
no, I went to work for this first shop. Um, I stayed there about 6 months. It was very dysfunctional in the shop. It was just it was actually dangerous, in this particular shop that I first started in. which I
Mm.
was not aware of when I first went there.
Maybe just to paint a picture,
Yeah.
describe that shop and tell me
Okay.
what's tell us, share with us what's dangerous, because somebody here is going to recognize something that they thought was just a condition. My shop is always messy. There's always sawdust on the floor. There's what was dangerous about that shop?
Well, so they were located, on the basement of a strip mall, sort of a thing. So it was in a commercial environment, but you had to go around the back of the building and down below to get to it. So anytime it rained heavily, the entire shop floor flooded with like 3 or 4 inches of water.
Oh,
So not only
that's
were there live electrical cords laying around on the floor, but there were also like a lot of cabinetry that was just sitting, on the floor.
oh no.
And I just said to myself, this is I just cannot work in this environment. And it seemed like no one, besides the owner, like no one really seemed to
Care.
not care about it, but it was not. It was a matter of fact sort of thing. This is where we are. This is our conditions, and I just thought to myself, I'm not going to learn in this environment. So I had another friend of mine that introduced me to his friend that built his kitchen. He built a barn on his property,
Mm.
which I eventually ended up doing. I mimicked exactly what he did. I went to work for him, and that's where I really learned about the construction methods and
The trade.
finishing methods and the
Yeah.
trade in general.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
I stayed with him for probably another year and a half, and then I ended up going out on my own, just because friends and family were asking me if I could build them this, build
Isn't
them
that
that.
funny? Yeah.
Yeah,
How many people have started saying, I built a kitchen for my aunt and it just took off from there,
right.
you know?
That was exactly what happened with me. And I started in my basement, and I didn't even have room to lift a sheet of material. It was because it was only like 7.5 feet
So you have
tall,
to cut it down close to size just to get it in the door. And then,
just to get it in the door. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
was it was ridiculous. So a
Isn't
short.
it amazing when you look back at how you started, how you came to where you are now? Because if, of
Oh,
all the disadvantages you had, yet you overcame them just
oh, you
one
find
step
a
at a time.
yeah, you find a way to do it. Like looking back now, it seems like so ridiculous, but at the time I was like, yeah, I can do this. It's fine. Even getting pieces out of the basement, they had to come out in like little parts and then put them together,
On
you
the
know,
driveway, right?
on the driveway or
Yeah,
wherever.
yeah.
So I ended up renting a small commercial garage. It was probably less than 1,000 square feet. I thought it was
Oh,
enormous.
that's a mansion compared to your 7 foot basement,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Yeah.
So I quickly filled that up and I started accumulating tools here and there, accumulating clients. I was still on my own at that point.
Mm.
I did have a couple of friends that would help me once in a while when I was installing something, but really, I was just winging it. No
Yeah.
business acumen or whatever.
Well, that's what I was going to ask just there. At that point, did you know that you were going to grow to be what you look like now, or were you just sort of waking up every day, going to the warehouse, going to the shop, get the
Yes.
next job?
I had ambitions that I would love to have a big shop one day and guys working for me, but I just could not. I could not foresee how I was going to get there.
Right.
So I seemed to just put it in the background all the time, and I just continually did the next right thing in front of me, like build the next cabinet, deliver the next cabinet, install it.
Yeah.
So the job started to accumulate. I did find, however, that contacting architects seemed to be, for me, a great continual source of work.
Mm.
Whereas, if I dealt with a homeowner, it was a one and done with their kitchen.
That's right.
The architects had a pipeline of work, and I just, started to really, spend my time marketing to them.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because the first thing that some people are saying right now is they're in their truck or walking around their shop listening to our podcast is,
Yeah,
well, why would an architect send business to a one man shop? But it sounds like that's exactly what they did.
yeah. What happened was, it seemed, and what they told me, this one particular architect, that I was small enough to be flexible to be able to cater to something that they needed right away, or and
Uh-huh.
they would not flood me with like massive jobs. They would give me the jobs that they felt like I was capable of producing in a timely
It's
manner.
it's so interesting that you say that, Brian, because when I interview architects or designers, they have a roster. They say, well, this is a $500,000 package. We're going to give it to Acme because they're a $500,000 package builder for us. When they've
Right.
got a little tuck-in job that's maybe 20, 30 grand, that's part of a bigger thing, well, they go to a
Yes.
different list and they're like, well, this is a Brian Clancy job. We don't give this
Right.
to the 500,000. So they've got their own little list going of who they give what.
Yes.
And I
That's
just I wanted to
exactly.
pass on from your story to other people listening. Just because you're small doesn't mean you don't have value to the architects and to the designers. Go to them, and what you are is an asset because they will find a way to tuck you in where you're appropriate for them.
Yeah, and I would approach it, and I would be honest with them. I say I'm a small shop. I'm not a big organization that can take on a huge shop. I'd say I've like one or two people working with me, which I've continually had throughout the years until now.
Yeah,
Um, but what happened with me was I joined the CMA, not probably
excellent.
2013 or before that, because I was finding myself, frustrated that I wasn't able to expand, or I wasn't able to uh, estimate jobs properly. I almost felt like I'm
You're
never going to
stuck.
make it.
You're
Yeah,
stuck. You felt
I'm
stuck.
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 Exactly.
Don't know what to do. Where do I start? There's so many things that you recognize you needed to do, but which one comes first? Which am I on the right track?
You absolutely. And
Yeah.
also, I came from a background where shop secrets, trade secrets, where the owner wouldn't tell me how he would build something. He would do it on the weekend by himself. Oh, you have to learn that yourself, and that kind of mentality. I was just like, I got to find some other people. So I received a mailing in the you know from the CMA that said we're having an event in New Jersey. Would you like sign up today and come and
Yeah.
join us? So I was like, what do I got to lose? So I went to it. I could not believe it. These guys were openly talking about their businesses. They were telling me how much they were grossing per year. They were
Yeah.
telling me the equipment they use.
Because
I
you're in a room with business people. You're
right,
in a room with business people who just happen to be, cabinet makers and mill workers and closet guys, people that are there. Can I give you an observation that I've made in the
yeah,
industry? So many people start like you did, which is the most honorable way to start. I started small. I
right,
started in my basement, then I rented 1,000 square. You probably have 1,000 square foot, you know, lunchroom now, right?
yeah. Well, our spray booth, yeah,
Yeah, there you go, your spray booth, right? But then at some point, the owner sort of stands up, and I want you to visualize this. The owner stands up, put their hand on their back, they're stretching, they're looking around, they're like, I got to run this like a company.
yeah,
And all around the country, the guys that are and men and women who are standing up doing that, they go towards an industry association. And I'm not taking away from the CMA, Amanda Conger, if you're listening. We're not, the
yeah,
CMA, which is the Cabinet Makers Association, is fantastic. But it doesn't matter what the trade is. It happens with HVAC, it happens with roofing, it happens with masons, tiling guys, plumbers. At some point, a couple guys say, you know what? I need something more. Just what you said. I need to talk to people.
yeah,
I need to get out of my own silo, right? Where I get in the truck, drive to the job site, get in the truck, drive to the shop. And that's the kind of people that join industry associations because they know they're ready for more.
right, right, exactly. Yeah, it was just like it was joining other, like you said, other business owners that knew exactly, where I was coming from when I tried
Yeah.
to talk to them about stuff. So I called my wife on the way home from that event, and I said, "This is this is the greatest thing." I said, "I know this is a great thing to get involved with," which I did, and I started going to some of the shows. The first time I went to IWF in Atlanta, I nearly fell on the floor walking into this. It was
Really?
unbelievable. It was just incredible. I spent like just one day walking around, not talking to anybody, and then another day, you know, you have to be organized when you go to those
Oh,
shows.
they're massive. I just went to the AWFS, which was in Vegas, and it's much
Yeah,
smaller. But I did the same thing. I spent probably the first half a day just walking, just to get a sense of where everything was, because the map tells you only so much, right? And then I went
right.
back and I sort of pick and chose where I
Yeah.
focused.
And then, involvement with the CMA was wonderful because they had their educational seminars, and that's where I really benefited. People would be just very open and frank about the business and the stuff and
Hmm.
how their sales and marketing will work and getting into CNC, which is what I did. Because so anyway, I left that 1,000 square foot shop just to backtrack a little bit. And then we moved our house, we moved over to Connecticut, and I
Oh,
built a big barn on my property, which was about 2,100 or 2,000 square feet. And I said to
yeah.
myself, this is more than I'll never fill this
Oh,
place up.
yeah.
So, and off we went again and filled up in no time. And, business was great. I stayed there since I've been there since 2004. So that's been just um, an ongoing thing, but I could not, because it was in a residential area, I could not hire more than one
Oh,
person.
for the
So
parking, etc.
I was
Right.
again limited to the amount of work that I could produce in that shop. Um, so I continued on. I got into doing commercial work, stayed with the CMA, made tremendous friends in the CMA. Some of the guys I talk to every day,
Oh,
basically, like
excellent.
there's,
Yeah.
yeah, just I actually got involved in volunteering for the CMA and ended up on the board of directors and been with there probably 4 or 5 years at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's been great to give back and just to see the relief on a lot of new people's faces when they come into the seminars, and you see them getting excited. They get fired. They see what I saw.
Yeah.
I see their faces when I was there. Um, so to be able to give back a little bit has been very rewarding as well. Um, so anyway, I think what happened with me was I'd kind of given up on not completely, but I had just kind of lost track of ever expanding into a big shop again.
You sort of, it
That
sounds like you got into the work mode and forgot that you were building it as a company, a
Yes,
business, right?
yeah,
And that's so common because you just get into a groove.
you get into a groove, and I was very comfortable there, and I was
Yeah.
cutting for other shops, and I was making a good living, and I kind of forgotten about that thought of mine that I'd love to have a big shop. It was just an ambition that I wanted to have. And a friend of mine who owned this shop that I'm in now told me that he was retiring, which was kind of unexpected. And then he said, I'm thinking about either auctioning off all the equipment or selling the shop because it is a profitable business. And initially, I said I'm too old. I just don't have it in me anymore. And then I talked to my CMA friends, and they said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa,
How old are your horses there?
whoa! Hold your horses." So they said, one friend of mine says, "This is an opportunity. You just have to investigate it. You don't have to make a decision right away. Just go investigate it."
Mm,
So I met with Eddie, the owner. We went through everything. He opened up his books to me, and we talked about the business. And the more we talked and met, the
yeah.
more excited I became. This of all the shops in my area, I'm so proud to say that this is hands down, head and shoulders above the quality of the work that comes out of this
Oh,
place
I
is head.
love to hear it.
It was just of all the shops to be offered, I couldn't have asked for a better shop. It was just incredible. It was just like on a plate to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had to work to get there. It
I
wasn't
did.
it wasn't
Yeah.
magic. It wasn't, it was nothing but putting one foot ahead of the other. But I noticed that you changed your mindset in little shifts along the way.
Yeah,
If listening to you, and hopefully when you go back and listen to this episode, you'll hear these little shifts that you had,
yeah.
you know?
What happened is, like you said, you get into a groove and you get into a rut, and you're working day to day, and something comes along and you really don't pay attention to it, and you need to have an outside interest take a look
Mm,
at it and see it from another perspective, because you're so, deep into your routine and your
this
everyday
is,
perspective. You just
yeah.
don't see it. You don't see the benefit, or
Yeah.
you can't see the forest for the trees. Is that what they're saying is,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. Yeah. It's true. Well, you just lose that. It's hard to step back from the business because we're so busy.
Yeah.
There's not a minute in that, if you were to think about it, and I'm sure people listening to the show think, I don't have time to step back and think about the business. I've got this job we're behind on. I got another one coming in. We've got a punch list over here. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Now you want me to step back and
Right.
think about things? Now I got to do. But there had to be transitions for you. Like, for instance, how did you go from 2 to 6 people?
Well, I had known these guys at this shop for like the past 15 or 20 years. I actually sold Eddie his first planer. I had an old planer that I was getting rid of. He still
Oh,
has it today. It's still
yeah,
here.
yeah.
And I got to know Eddie, and we switched jobs back and forth with one another. Um, and when I got here, I was very intimidated by that, because I was like, I got to keep everybody busy. But Eddie, he was so, what I've learned from his shop, he's so organized. The communication is key. The communication from the office to the shop floor was, which I never dealt with before. I had everything in here.
Uh,
So
yeah, for
that,
people watching or listening to this as a podcast, this is also on YouTube. And Brian
uh,
just pointed to his head. It's
yeah,
I find very common because I talk to people into finished wood trades all the time. Doesn't matter if they do closets or architectural or cabinets. There is a gap between getting it from the office to I'll say the CNC, but it could be going to the saw. Doesn't matter. But there's a
yeah.
gap there. And sometimes it's 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it gets there fast, but it's not a complete package and it just causes problems on the floor. And that's really a bottleneck for people. So it's interesting that you recognize that right away.
Oh yeah, that was so important, because the guys in the shop, they're seeing the drawings for the very first time. I've had 2 or 3 weeks to mull over the drawings and go through all the details. They're just seeing it for the first time. They have questions. So the more information I can give them, the scheduling of the jobs, the
Hmm.
organization, and they have very standardized practices here in the shop, which I had to learn. So it was more of a learning curve for me than for the guys.
Oh,
And
because you leveled up. Like, so what I'm understanding then is you came into Eddie's shop and you leveled up that way. Like you bought up.
yes, I bought
Ah,
up. Yeah. So
nice.
I didn't try to bring my 1 and 2 man practices in here, because it would have completely. I mean, he runs a tight ship. He ran a tight ship.
Right.
So I had like an awesome responsibility to continue that. I've got guys here, they've got families, they've got everything, responsibilities. So I wanted to come in and just learn their system. And if I could input a little bit of, maybe lean organization or something like that.
Mm. Hmm.
But it's a pretty lean, mean organization that he had here. Um, so I was just delighted to be involved. And then there was the introduction to the customers. So this whole moving to the bigger shop, I had always thought to myself before coming here, I'm going to have to find a bigger space. I'm going to have to find employees. I'm going to have to outfit it with all this equipment. I'm going to have to, I always thought it was all on me, but I just walked into a functioning, profitable shop.
Well, it can,
You know,
you're not alone in that. You know,
I was just wondering if there are a lot of other guys that go that route.
there are. I mean, you did it. It sounds like it happened to you. You went along a path and you saw an opportunity and you took it. But I've
Yeah,
been part of conversations where we did it strategically on purpose. Because right now, let's take the employee situation that we all have. It's very difficult to find enough quality staff, people, right? Trained and up to speed. And so everybody's out there trying to hire one at a time.
Yes.
I was working with a company. They're about a $20 million architectural millwork firm. And in
Wow.
speaking with the owner, we're like, we keep going at this trying to find one guy at a time. And just during a coaching meeting, I'm like, what if we did it wholesale? What if we went and bought somebody who had a 6-man shop
Wow.
and morphed it in? Well, they ended up buying a 10-man shop.
Wow.
And a 10-man shop is a good shop, but they gained not only 10 people at a time, but they also got more manufacturing space. And in the city they were in, building new space, getting all the permits and the zoning and the blah, 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 would have taken them
Yes.
3 years. Well, it only took them, if I do all of the math, it took about a year and a half to complete the transaction for the 10-man shop.
Right.
Right. So you're not alone in that. You can go out and as you already said, look at the problems in a different way and come up with a new solution.
Yeah. It was, yeah, I've never looked at it that way before, but when it came to like walking into a shop that's already established and signing the paperwork Friday, walking in Monday and starting to build the first cabinet. I mean, how cool
did
is that?
did he
Yeah.
stay on for a little while with you?
Actually, yes, he did. He's been great. He's staying on 2 months. He went through, all his estimating procedures, his invoice, all the office work. Um, he's actually agreed to continue, providing shop drawings for us, which
Oh,
is
good. Yeah.
awesome because that's what the guys are used to until we get up to speed.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll tell you a funny story about employees. Maybe not a funny story, but a very coincidental thing. I'm not surprised that it happened. Let me tell you that. We were in the office yesterday. A young kid walks in. He's probably in his mid 20s. He says, "So I have a CNC machine. I'm the only one here familiar with it, and I just moved it down on Tuesday
Mm.
to the shop here, and we're getting it set up and getting electric and air run to it." This kid walks into the office here. He says, "My name is Leo. I'm a cabinet shop, a local cabinet shop here. I run their CNC, and I'm wondering if you guys have any positions available."
No way. The same day that the thing's getting installed.
The day after, the day after it was delivered, he walked into the office and asked if we had any openings for a CNC operator. And I was racking my brain thinking, how am I going to get the guys to learn?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I see that as like a God moment.
Yeah.
For
The
any of
heaven
the people out there that
the heavens
that
opened up, the angels sang, and Leo walked through the
yes,
door.
and the kid walked in through the door. So for me, I just felt like it was another reassurance to me that I was on the right path. And
Yeah.
things were going to be, a guy by the name of James McGrew down in South Carolina introduced me to CNC machines.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, he says, don't worry about learning. You will learn it. It'll take a little bit of time. But he says, you build it and the kings will come.
Ah,
That was his word. I've never, ever forgotten him telling me that.
yeah.
And I thought to myself, this was another moment where if you take the leap of faith and you move forward in your life, even though it's scary, it's stressful, and you're not sure,
Mm-hmm.
that it's 100% true. Little moments like that come along just to, reassure me that we're on the right path.
If you had to give a message to yourself,
Yeah,
like back in the past, let's go back. Let's go back before you moved to Connecticut. So
yeah,
before you changed facilities and built the barn dominium.
yeah.
Um, what would you say to yourself now looking back?
I would say to myself, be less afraid. Take take a chance. Um, yeah, or well, even though I am afraid, go ahead anyway and do it. What do
Yeah.
a calculated risk.
Let me add something to that because I know that time is so precious to everybody. You just pulled in a million directions. We all sit here talking about the business, but in reality, we're running the business so we can get back home and hug our wife and kiss our kids and
Yes.
go to baseball practice. So, what would you have done differently with your time? Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently with your time before talking to your younger self?
Um, well, time wise, I love woodworking. I've always loved woodworking, and I being at home allowed me to spend a lot of time with my wife, and my kids, and my family and stuff. Um, but I would still love to do, go vacationing more with them, fishing, all the stuff that
Yeah.
normal people. Like sometimes I see these other guys. They have Harley. They drive around in Harleys. They're off on their motorhome somewhere. I'm saying to myself, why am I not? Why am I not able to do that?
Yeah.
They're. But I think having having more people and more skilled people and knowledge. A lot of people are a lot smarter than I am. Why not let them, you know, do the work for me and try
Yeah.
to
Leverage.
delegate a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, good.
That's something that I'm really going to try to practice a little bit more now.
I let's start moving towards the end, but I have to tell you something funny that's gone on. It's just happened in the industry. But
Yeah.
many years ago, I was writing for Forbes magazine,
Yes.
and the editor loved to call me up. When he had a boring topic, and he's like, "Dominic, can you make this better? Like, can you add some juice to it?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "I want to talk about profitability and for construction. That's a pretty dry topic. Like,
Yeah.
the article that article's been written a million times, and a million more are coming."
Right.
So he and I were working together on how we would make it a little bit more exciting. Well, it just so happened that St. Patrick's Day was coming up when my not my episode my article was going to go live the week or something just before St. Patrick's Day. And so
Yeah.
we're chatting about that, and I'm like, I had this client years ago. At this point, it was years ago, and I had shown him the end of job report, which is how you figure out whether or not you're profitable on a job by job basis.
Yes.
Because if you're profitable job by job, at the end of the year, you'll be profitable as long
Right.
as you're not doing crazy things like, funneling money out of the side. And by the way, not only am I a business coach, I'm an Italian business coach. I'm a big fan of you funneling money out of your business. I'm fine with it. But you can only have one set of books, right? Anyways, on the end of job report, he had said to me one day as he was looking at it, he goes, "Dom, this is like finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow." And so just for fun, we started calling it the leprechaun report.
Uh,
Now, I know that might come across to you as racist because you're Irish,
well, profile definitely. Profile definitely. Yeah.
but it's a great way to think about you get to the beauty of our industry, as you said, if I sell to Mr. and Mrs. Jones, it's a one and done. If I sell to the architect, I have continuous, maybe one or two jobs a year, maybe 12 jobs a year.
Right.
But the beauty of our industry is that if I do job A and then I do the end of job report and it says, "Hey, you did really well on job A," by the time I get to job C, I'll just repeat that.
Yes.
Now, when I go look at job B and I say, "We didn't do so well on that, and here's why, and here's where," well, now by the time you get to job D, you've learned and you can change. So the evolution in this business is as fast as you turn your jobs, as long as you're learning as you go. And there's no reason you can't be pulling out gross profit and net profit margins that you haven't even thought of before, because you can learn job by job. $25,000 kitchen or $250,000 closet, doesn't matter. You learn job by job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an area um, that I know, I could certainly use improvement on, tracking more the projects. So they do have a system in place here where they, just some of the smaller projects, they just keep all the receipts for the project. They try to track the man hours, that sort of thing, and see where they come out at the end.
Mm.
I think that's going to be one of my new roles here. It's so important. I mean,
Yeah.
I gotta be able to pay everybody.
No,
you know,
no, no. They work for you out of love
and keep the doors open.
and
More
keep the doors
importantly,
open.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe as a thank you for being a guest on the show, we'll have another meeting and I'll show you what the end of job looks like. That's the tool you use to do what you said.
that would be awesome. That
Yeah.
would be great. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Just I'm at the point now where I'm on a learning curve, so another learning part
Oh yeah.
will
Yeah.
do no harm.
Just pile it on, right?
Pile it on. Yeah,
Pile
keep
it
it
on.
coming.
Brian, such a good interview. Thank you. If
Yeah,
somebody
thank you,
wants to
Tom.
find you in this big wide world, how do we do that? Where?
Well, we talked about the Cabinet Makers Association earlier. I'm a member of the Cabinet Makers Association. You can find me on um, cabinetmakers.org. I have my business website is clancywoodworking.com, and feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from anyone. I'm willing to share, you know, whatever I can with you to help you improve your business. The way people in the CMA have been just wonderful, you know, with giving of their time and experience and just their wisdom. It's just been something that
Yeah,
I've really appreciated.
it's leaps and bounds. I found the same
Yes,
thing when I go to a conference or a trade show. It's easy to look at the trade show and go, I don't know, the speaker lineup, the presenters or the display, But what I'm missing is what you're talking about right here is that conversation just as you're walking with somebody grabbing a coffee. It's not
yes,
scripted, it's not planned, it's nothing. You're just standing in line for a hot dog. But you're talking to somebody else and they say something, you're like, "Oh my God, that was the missing link."
that's
And
right.
nowhere in the conference agenda did it say I was going to learn that.
That's
And
right.
you just can't replace it, but you got to be there to get it. Does that make sense?
That's yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be in to win. You can't. If I just come back with one little tidbit of information that I can implement into the shop or the office from those conferences,
Right.
it's so worth it. I always come away with something. Yeah, every
Yeah.
time.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Well, Brian, thank you very much for being a guest on the show. I love how legitimate this episode was because I can hear your CNC in the background. Or is that, I don't know if that's your planer. If it's
yeah.
something right behind the wall.
Watch out for the sawdust flying everywhere here. As soon as I
Yeah.
open the door of the office,
Yeah.
but I really appreciate you asking me, Dominic. I'm honored that you give me the opportunity to come on here and talk a little bit about my company, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you as well.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Well, we'll certainly
Yeah.
talk to you again. I'll reach out to you and we'll do that. I'll share the screen. I'll show you how the end of job report works. And that's
Okay.
that's the answer to that question. I think. Maybe I might need to know more, but that I think that's going to be the answer to your question there.
That would be great.
All right. Thanks,
All
Brian.
right. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye bye. Well, well, well. What did you learn from Mr. Brian Clancy? I just noticed, by the way, that I'm holding a green pen in honor of the Irish background of Mr. Brian Clancy. Thank you, Brian, for being on the show. I do appreciate it. And you know what? I liked learning from you today. That was a good interview, a good show. Uh, but listen, what about you? What can you put in place from what you learned today from Mr. Clancy? My big takeaway was his comments on people and on growth. And on the growth side and on the challenges that he had and the opportunities that he found, it made me think of the blind spots that we have in our business. Because one of the questions I get from people, it's kind of in the front of the conversation. People contact me however they do, right? Through the email, through the podcast. I'm like, hey Dom, let's talk, which is cool. Dom, let's talk, right? And then they're like, well, how do you get started? How do I turn the business around? Is the question. And whether they blurt it out or not, that's the top of their mind. And the answer has to be frustrating. Like you have to just roll your eyes when you hear it. And the answer is it depends. I would be frustrated at that answer, except that I keep saying it depends. I've been saying it depends for 20 plus years. And the reason that it depends is because it depends on you. It depends on your situation. It depends on where your business is at right now and where you want to get the business to. I don't know if you can see this on YouTube, but when I'm having the conversation with you, I've got to line up your goals today, your short-term goals. Maybe if you're not looking at this on YouTube, watching this as a video, think about looking through the scope of your gun on a rifle, right? You've got the scope. So that first reticle is the first thing you're looking through. And then at the end, the outside of the scope is the next one. And maybe just to continue the analogy, the barrel of the gun, right? We need to line all those up. And it's the same for your business. So it depends on where you are and where you're aiming. If we keep using the firearms analogy, you're aiming uphill, downhill, is there wind drift, all of those things that we think about as hunters or sports shooters, right? But as a business coach, what I listen to and what my whole team listens to is your situation. Is it a family business? Are you solo? Do you have a customer problem? Do you have a team problem? Do you have, and is your team problem on the production side? Is your team problem on the office side? Is the team problem perhaps something that you're doing or haven't been able to figure out? There's so many variables. Is there a vendor problem? Is there a customer problem? Is there a receivables? Do we have a scheduling problem? Who in cabinetry doesn't say they have a scheduling problem at some point? Um, so we all have different situations. And you might say, well, Dom, I have all of those. Okay, fair enough. That is a very mature way to look at your business by saying, I have all of those situations. Well, that being said, which one has to be unplugged first for the next one to fall? And so it always depends. And so what I really appreciated from Brian was the way he went through it. I love hearing these stories about growth and what he had to overcome to get where he is today. And you can tell that he's not done, right? So I think blind spots is the best analogy for me. I might talk about that later today. But I want to share a story. We haven't done story time with Dom in a long time. I had a chance to speak to one of our coaching clients. He's a one-on-one coaching client. You guys know that we do coaching programs here, right? We've got the boot camp for people that are more in a, under $1 million in sales. And then we've got one-on-one coaching for people that are growing. Sometimes people have such strong faith in their growth plans that we'll accept them into the program before they're at $1 million in sales. And this is the story of a guy named Ben. Now, you guys know me well enough to know that his name's not Ben. He is in Alabama, but I want to change his name to protect the innocent, if you know what I mean. This is his growth story. I'd have to ask him one day if he wanted to be a guest on the show. But when he does, then you'll find out his name and you'll hear the story and you go, hey, that's the guy he called Ben. And it's not Ben. It's still a 3-letter name, but it's not Ben. But I want to take you back to August of 2023. Now, I'm recording this in April of 2024. Now, maybe it goes live in May, right? But either way, we're talking about 8, maybe 9 months. So you can do the math on your own. Whether it's 8 or 9 months does not change the superhero that is Ben. I want to tell you just a little bit about him and give him a high five, a virtual high five over the podcast waves. So this is a contractor who is listening to the podcast on his own headphones in an 800 square foot shop in August of 2023. Like I said, that's 8 months ago. So I want you to picture Ben in Alabama, a guy with, strong faith, strong family values, a brand new 7-month-old baby. Do the math on that. He started business coaching with us within a month of his baby's birth. I'm always amazed when some people say, give excuses, and other people just say it's a condition. That's my situation of my life. We're going for it. And I'm always amazed and impressed by that. And you're going to hear what Ben has done here. Now, like almost everybody listening, and I see this with everyone we get a chance to talk to, you are internally driven and internally motivated. What does that mean? You don't need somebody outside pushing you and nudging you. You don't even need our help. Heck, you're the guy everybody else asks for help. So why would you turn to us for help? Well, there's a level of ego and maturity that has to kick in. Enough ego to set the ego aside, enough maturity to say, hey, maybe I need a coach, not somebody ahead of me, but beside me. Maybe somebody I can talk to confidentially about the stuff I can't talk to anybody else. In Ben's case, I'm putting words in his mouth, definitely. But is he going to go and start debriefing the day to his wife, who is juggling now a baby or having a baby, depending on where it was in the decision-making process? No. So who do you talk to that has the pure and solo intent of your success? Because that's what this story is about, and the background that helps Ben get where he needs to. Anyways, he'd been working hard for years, and he contacted me to find out ways to work smarter, not just harder. Now, listen, I wonder if you feel the same way he did, right? Saying to yourself, I want to get my business to the next level. I just can't see over that next hill. And so that's where I come in, right? So anyways, he went on to tell me he'd been listening to the show for about 2 years at that point. So 2 years he'd been listening and never thinking he'd be able to pull the trigger and work with us. So there he is with a pregnant wife pulling the trigger. But and this is, from our phone conversation, he goes, Dom, something in me just picked up the phone and sent the text message, Dom, let's talk. And it sounded like he was just like he didn't pre-think it. He's just like, I got to call Dom. I got to call Dommy. Dude, Dom, let's talk. That's all it is, right? A text message. That's how these conversations start. Let me paint a picture of the changes he's seen in his business in the last 8 months. From being solo, he now has 3 full-time people. Okay, cool. So he's not doing all the work. He's bought his time back. He moved from that 800 square foot shop to a 3,600 square foot shop. Catch this. In the first quarter of this year, so that's January, February, and March, he did the same amount of sales as all of last year. So in 3 months, he beat his sales for last year. And who's standing beside him working with him? Well, there's me on the strategy side, and there's Coach Lee Miller, who you guys all know. He's been on the show many times. Coach Lee Miller on the tactical side, right? So that's how we break things up. There's me on strategy. There's the business coach, in this case, Lee, on the tactical parts of business coaching. So Lee and him and Lee standing side by side have gotten him back to the profit first accounting system, which means he's managing his money properly. He's getting paid first. He's using the EOS planning system, right? Traction, which is the system that we use for strategic planning. And I got to tell you, he's only at the bottom of the curve on the graph that goes straight up. You know what I mean? Like, he has nothing but green space and opportunity ahead of him because he's internally driven, internally motivated. He had enough ego to set his ego aside and send me the text message that says, Dom, let's talk. And now he's working with Lee and me, and boom. Right. So Ben from Alabama, and you know who you are. We're proud to be working with you. And by the way, sir, I'm still waiting for a picture of that bourbon old fashioned on your porch. It does not qualify for the $5 coffee, but I still want to see the picture. Anyways, let's move on. So as I was interviewing Brian, the blind spots of a business kept coming to me. And I guess really even it's illustrated in Ben's situation, because you might be listening to that story I just told about Ben from our phone call and say, well, that's kind of like me, but it's not really like me. My situation's different. I have a business partner. I have somebody in my family in the business. I don't own my space. I rent my space. Or you might say, geez, I own my space. You might say, I've got a 34,000 square foot shop. That's nothing like me. Well, cool your jets. Again, ego. Let's put our ego aside for a second. We're not here to help. We're here to stand beside you and show you the path. We've walked the path before. If you were going to climb Mount Everest, would you not take a Sherpa? Yeah. If you're going to go hunt for caribou in the Arctic, are you just going to fly up there, get out of the plane and tell the pilot, yeah, come back in, I don't know, 2 weeks? And first hope to get a caribou, beg and pray not to get eaten by a grizzly. And third, get back to where the landing strip was? No, you're going to take a guide, right? If one of your kids is really good in school, but wants to just crush that grade a little bit more so that they get into the college or university of their choice, you're going to get them a tutor. The tutor's just going to show them how to do the problems, how to take on the challenges. That's essentially what we do here. So if you have blind spots, first of all, let's admit it. I have blind spots. Heck, how many times have I apologized on this podcast in the last couple of months? I have blind spots. And you know what? I got blind spots. So let's go deal with them. I'm not going to stick my head in the sand like an ostrich. I'm going to deal with them. And I'm asking you to do the same thing. So I think today, to simplify and solve a common problem that we all face in the industry is let's get back at the high level of our business. Now, this doesn't matter whether you are a small shop like Ben was when he started listening, or you're a large shop. You know, one of my clients is like, just to do it by revenue, 60 million a year in millwork. Yeah, it can be done. And I would still assign them this particular self-assessment to do on their own. Now, Ben is having a bourbon old fashioned on his porch. I probably wouldn't suggest that, but this is one of the things I want you to do, where you go get a coffee in a coffee shop on your own, face the corner, favorite coffee, nicest place in the city, better than Starbucks, definitely better than, Dunkin'. And just be in an upmarket place so you can have upmarket thoughts. You're growing this business. I want you to have the mental capacity and the imagination to take yourself there. And if you can't, the blind spots exercise will get you. It's this tool, right? You're already used to the tools in the shop. I'm talking about tools in the office, but wait, now I'm talking about tools that we would apply at a board of directors level for a large corporation. So you are the chair of the board. Let's say that I've come in as the advisor, one of the advisors to the board of directors. So around you, you've got all the board that you've placed together, right? Maybe you've got one of the best engineering companies in the city. Their president is on your board of directors. Your local bank, one of them is on your board of directors, right? Maybe the biggest car dealership in town, the owner, the founder of that And then somebody from the hospital foundation is also on your board. I want you to think about your company from that perspective. And then I want you to think at some point you said, hey, I got this guy named Dom. Why don't we get him to come in and facilitate this board of directors conversation to make sure this board is operating properly for the benefit of Acme Wood and Millwork Corp. This is the exercise that I would give you. At the same time, if you're just starting out like Ben, same exercise, because your answer is going to give you the output you need at the place and time you're at. You probably, I would hope you notice that a lot of these tools that I have are evergreen tools. The Go Back Report, evergreen tool, right? The 1 hour calculator, evergreen tool. Those tools can be the Find and Fix Your 8 profit leaks, evergreen tools. The better we simplify things, the more powerful we get, because we're not we're not subject to the what ifs. The what ifs will throw us off all the time. We're going to take control by simplifying and focusing. So that's what I want you to do with this blind spots report. It's a construction or contracting business reality check. And again, talk about simplicity. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in this exercise. I'm going to put you through a filter. And it's a very specific filter where you have to stop and think about your company, take a sip of that delicious coffee, look out the window, your headphones in, nice music playing in your ears, and think, question number 1 is going to ask me against a score of 5, do we have a clear vision in writing that everybody in the company knows about well enough to say it back to me? That's question 1. And there's 19 more questions like that, right? The idea here is I just want you to consider these things. After 20, literally the game of 20 questions, here's the 20th question, by the way. Since I gave you question 1, I'll give you the 20th question. You've been working through this, facing the window. It's a beautiful day outside. You're in the nicest coffee shop in your town, your city, or your neighborhood. And now you consider question 20. You can only give yourself a score of out of 1 to 5, right? 5 is where you're strong, super strong. 1, you recognize there's some weakness or opportunity. Here's question 20. We have a budget and we're monitoring it regularly. That budget is monthly or quarterly, and I have other people reporting numbers I trust back to me. So where would you fall on that scale, 1 or 5? Now, those 2 questions aren't the point of this exercise. What those 2 questions are is an illustration of what the other, the whole 20 questions is about. It's very high level, but it's meant to keep you in entrepreneur mode, where you remember I said Ben is internally driven, Brian Clancy internally driven. There's something in you that we just can't get rid of. Something that says, I will own a business. I will build a successful business in cabinetry, millwork, closets. That's you. I can't change that. I can only take that skill and put a shine on it, move it forward in your skill set. And that's what we're doing here. Anyways, I'd like you to have this thing. It's just a couple pages. How many pages is it? 3. 3 pages. Print it off. Go to your favorite coffee shop. Do a little bit of smart work. Block yourself off in the calendar. Meeting with business coach. Nobody has to know who you're meeting. Just says meeting with business coach. Meeting with Dom. Blame Dom. That seems to be a great way for things to go. Blame Dom. Anyways, if you want this, you guys know how to text me. Please just send me a text message. The cell phone number to get this blind spots document is 315-903-7853. And then just say blind spots. That's it. You just 2 words, blind spots, and text me, and then we'll make sure you get that back. Now, your job, once you have that back, is to do it. And if you want to reach out to us and ask any questions, that's great too. By the way, I keep saying us, and I've been saying us more and more. We are growing. So our team, my team is small but mighty. For those of you who've been listening to the podcast over the last couple of months, you've noticed we've had some kerfuffle here. Is kerfuffle a good word? Because I had to clean house. You may have seen an Instagram post that I did where I said, I will not be held hostage in my own company. And that was like an early indicator that you guys might have seen that some things were going on. So I felt like I was approaching being held hostage. So I took some bold moves to change that, because I run this company for you. I mean, of course I run it for me, but I'm here to serve. I'm a servant leader. My team is servant leaders. So we made some bold moves. And at the same time, I wanted to rebrand the company. So lots of things going on here. And those rebranding decisions were made because I wanted to serve our ideal client better. That's you. And so please take this as a compliment. we were trying to combine the two podcasts under the banner of 10x Build, 10 times your building company, but it just never rang true. There's another gentleman out there that talks about 10xing your business, and we kind of popped on the scene at the same time with the same words. And his style is not my style. I don't want to be associated with that. I'm not going to change him, so I changed me. I can only control what I can control. So I sat back, and I'm in a business club as well, and I talked to my mentors and advisors, and I explained our brand position. I built out the avatar. So I said, "Who are you guys?" And you make a general, like, the people who listen to my show, 35 to 60 years old, internally driven, internally motivated, males, tend to be conservative in their politics, very family and faith focused, strong in their values. And so we started talking about that. And I gave my mentor group a couple of options. And the one that they all came back with was the one that I originally thought would be the best. And it's Contractor Wealth System, which we're going to call CWS. So you're going to start to see, what are you going to start to see? Well, nothing different. Coach Lee Miller is still Coach Lee Miller, and he's on the CWS team, as am I, right? So I do the tactics. When we do one-on-one coaching, I'm the strategic coach. And then the tactical coaches, catch that, is Lee Miller. We're also going to be having Omzi Lehman. We're going to be having Jake Power and Ryan Hindmarsh. So even through all that kerfuffle that you saw, I continue to forge forward. Nobody will hold me hostage in my own business. Never going to happen. Ever. Ever. I will find a way. So did I encounter business challenges just like you do? Yeah. And I encounter them every day. But I will tell you this, and you guys probably know this already. Maybe you can hear it in the tone of my voice. If I encounter a problem, a challenge, or a bottleneck, I will find a way to go through it, over it, under it, around it, or completely redefine it so it suits my purposes. Hopefully you take a measure of comfort in that, because you can do the same thing. Ben from Alabama did the same thing. Brian Clancy did the same thing. And that's what business coaches do. So we stand beside you. We don't stand ahead of you. We don't stand behind you. We stand beside you, like that board of directors meeting. We're there to guide and advise. We're there to say, hey, there could be a landmine coming up. Why don't we step around that? We're here to listen to what you're saying and say, yeah, that's good. That's good. Consider this, consider that. And we're also here to listen when you have to talk to somebody about something you can't share with anybody else. We're the people, right? So be on the lookout for that. Anyways, if you want the blind spots document, so you can do your own construction business reality check, contracting business reality check, grab it from me. Get what you need. The way to get it is to text me at 315-903-7853. Now, if you'll allow me, one other thing. So I personally, Dominic, I only take on a very few clients. Coach Lee Miller has been taking on the bulk of them, as you guys know, for about 2 years. Now we're growing, so I've added 3 other coaches. We're going to be working with them. And by the way, they're all business owners on their own as well, all of them. As a matter of fact, Omzi is an ex-client, a builder. So everybody who's a coach on my team has been there, done that, and is still doing it. It's hard to get on my team, which I do on purpose. However, I have an opening. I have an opening for one client. Now, I say this respectfully, but the client that I'm looking for is very specific. You have to have sales over 3 million a year in business. So that's a hard stop, right? Because I have to support my team as well. So I want to work with somebody who is doing over 3 million in sales. I'm happy to work with a solo business owner or maximum 2 partners. However, both partners have to be one in, all in. If one partner's half in, it's not going to work, and that's fine. It's just that we're not going to be able to work together. What I have as an opening on my calendar is for the one-on-one coaching. Now, everybody else is still going to get the same program. If you call me and you're doing 2 million a year, if you contact me and you're doing 800,000 a year, we still have opportunities for you. I'm just saying that on my roster, I have one spot available, but it is specifically reserved for somebody over the 3 million mark. Now, somebody might be going, well, how come? How come if I'm a smaller client, I can't work with you? Because those spots are filled. I already have smaller revenue size clients that I'm working with, but I very carefully choose how I use the time so that I can serve everybody the best. So again, Lots of opportunity to get coached here, but the one-on-one opportunity with me right now is I have room for one client who's already doing 3 million or above, and both owners are in more than I am. Anyways, I hope that makes sense. If you want to talk to me about that, just say, Dom, let's talk. Just text me. It's the same number as you get the blind spots report, 315-903-7853. And but don't let that shy you away from talking to us anyways. When we do one-on-one coaching, I'm involved anyway. I'm involved. We separate things into strategic and tactical. So every month you're going to have 3 meetings. This is what coaching looks like. You have 3 meetings when you're on our coaching program. 1 meeting's with me, and the other 2 meetings are with your coach, like Lee or Omzi, Jake or Ryan, right? So it's not like you're losing anything. It's just that I have only 1 spot on my calendar available. All right. I feel like I've over-explained myself, so I'm going to stop and back up. Thank you very much for listening. Guys, this is just a holdover until you and I can have a cup of coffee, glass of wine over a table, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for checking in.